Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, August 13th, 2026, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside will reach a high of 84.2 degrees today, with a low of 67.9 degrees. In our top stories, we are examining the tense situation involving Russia, as Vladimir Putin promises retaliation following the seizure of commercial vessels. We will also dissect the historic $12.5 billion deal involving Josh Kushner and Bob Iger, which has secured them ownership of the Lakers. Beyond these major headlines, we have updates on several other significant events from around the world that you will not want to miss. There is plenty of ground to cover in today's broadcast. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. We're tracking a sharp new warning from Moscow this morning that could raise tensions across the world's oceans. Russian President Vladimir Putin is threatening to retaliate against Western nations over the seizure of Russian commercial ships. For more, we're joined by our reporter, Ethan. Ethan, good morning. What exactly did Putin say?
Good morning, Grace. So this happened yesterday, on Wednesday, August 12th. Putin was visiting the Varyag missile cruiser, which is part of the Pacific Fleet, and he was watching military exercises near Yuzhno-Sakhalinsk on Sakhalin Island. According to the Associated Press, he called the detention of Russian-linked vessels, quote, robbery, end quote, and also, quote, piracy, end quote. He argued those seizures are a clear breach of international maritime law.
Strong words. Did he actually spell out how Russia might respond?
He did, and that's the part that got everyone's attention. Putin warned that Russia would be, quote, forced to respond in kind, end quote, if these seizures keep happening. And here's the key detail, Grace. He said the response wouldn't be limited to the waters where the Russian ships were originally detained. Reporting from military.com and KTVN, that's 2 News, notes he said Russia could strike back anywhere it deems, quote, necessary and appropriate, end quote, and he specifically mentioned the Pacific.
The Pacific. So this isn't just talk about one region?
Right, and that's what makes it feel like an escalation. By naming the Pacific, Putin is signaling this could play out far from where the original disputes started. Remember, he's making these remarks while standing on a warship during live military exercises, so the setting itself is meant to send a message. It's a show of force as much as it is a statement.
You mentioned the Navy. Did any military leaders back him up?
Yes. Admiral Victor Liina, who's the chief of the Pacific Fleet, spoke directly to Putin and confirmed they're ready. Liina told the president that the Russian Navy has enough assets to start inspecting and detaining commercial ships serving, quote, unfriendly nations, end quote. He went a step further, too, pointing to what he called a shadow fleet, operated by European carriers. He specifically named Britain and France, and said those ships use the flags of other nations to hide where they really come from.
A shadow fleet. That term keeps coming up. Can you unpack what that means?
Sure. A shadow fleet basically refers to vessels that disguise their ownership or origin, often by flying another country's flag. It's a way to keep operating despite sanctions. Now here's the twist, Grace. The West accuses Russia of running its own shadow fleet to sell oil around sanctions, and now Russia is throwing that same accusation right back at Europe. So both sides are essentially using the same language against each other.
So how did we get here? Where does this conflict really begin?
It goes back to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. After that, Western nations imposed heavy sanctions. The European Union has sanctioned hundreds of ships that it believes are part of a Russian shadow fleet. And that fleet is thought to number in the hundreds of vessels used to dodge oil sanctions. So this is really the maritime front of a much larger economic battle that's been building for more than 4 years now.
And have any of these ships actually been stopped?
They have, and that's what's fueling Putin's anger. The Associated Press reports that France and the United Kingdom have already detained tankers suspected of belonging to that Russian shadow fleet. So from Moscow's point of view, these aren't hypothetical threats, they're a direct reaction to seizures that have already taken place. That's why the language yesterday was so pointed.
How is Russia responding on the water right now?
Well, this is a concrete shift, Grace. Russia has recently begun deploying warships to escort its own commercial vessels. So instead of letting tankers travel alone and risk being detained, they're sending naval protection alongside them. That changes the dynamic considerably, because now you've got military ships in close proximity to Western navies that are trying to enforce sanctions. Any confrontation at sea could involve armed vessels on both sides.
That sounds like a recipe for a dangerous encounter. Is anyone else in Moscow amplifying these threats?
Yes, and this is where it gets even sharper. Dmitry Medvedev weighed in. He's the deputy head of Russia's Security Council, and he served as president from 2008 to 2012. Medvedev called for what he described as a, quote, symmetrical approach, end quote. His argument is that since European carriers also use flags of convenience, the same trick Russia is accused of, then Russia has the legal right to attack any merchant vessel belonging to hostile nations.
The legal right to attack merchant ships? Did he put any limits on that?
Almost none, and that's what's alarming. According to the AP, Medvedev said that right applies whether the ship is in Russian waters or neutral waters. His only condition was that there be reasonable grounds to suspect the ship is carrying cargo in, quote, the enemy's interest, end quote. And that's a very broad standard, Grace. It could potentially apply to a wide range of commercial ships crossing international waters.
And I understand he didn't stop at the Black Sea?
That's right. Medvedev warned that the Russian military is capable of dramatically expanding these operations well beyond the Black Sea basin. So when you combine that with Putin naming the Pacific, you start to see a picture where Russia is suggesting it could act against Western shipping across multiple oceans. It's a way of telling the West that the pressure they've applied through sanctions can be answered globally.
So how seriously should the West take all of this? Is it posturing or something more?
That's the big question, and honestly, it's a mix. Some of this is clearly rhetoric designed to deter France, Britain, and the EU from seizing more tankers. But the deployment of warships to escort commercial vessels is a real physical change on the water. When you have military escorts operating near Western navies enforcing sanctions, the risk of miscalculation goes up. So even if the strongest threats are meant to intimidate, the underlying situation is genuinely tense.
What should we be watching for in the days ahead?
I'd keep an eye on a few things. First, whether France or the UK detain any more tankers, because that seems to be the trigger Moscow is responding to. Second, whether Russia actually follows through on inspecting or detaining Western commercial ships, the way Admiral Lina described. And third, any reaction from the European Union or NATO members, since a response from them could either cool things down or push this further. For now, both sides are testing each other's limits at sea.
Is there any sign of diplomacy, or are we strictly in the threats and warship stage?
Right now, Grace, the public messaging is all about deterrence and force, not negotiation. We're hearing tough talk from Putin on a warship and legal justifications from Medvedev, but no visible diplomatic off-ramp in these particular statements. That doesn't mean back-channel talks aren't happening, but publicly, this is a standoff. And the maritime piece is dangerous, precisely because it unfolds far from cameras, in open water, where incidents can escalate quickly.
Before we go, remind us why this matters to people watching at home.
It matters because a lot of the world's oil and goods move by sea, and threats against merchant shipping can ripple into energy prices and supply chains. Beyond the economics, you've got the risk of a direct confrontation between Russian warships and Western navies, and that's the kind of spark that can widen a conflict. So while this started as a dispute over sanctions after the 2022 invasion, it's now touching the open ocean, and that affects everyone.
Really important context. Ethan, thank you so much for breaking all of this down for us this morning.
My pleasure, Grace. I'll keep tracking it and bring you updates as they come in.
That's our reporter Ethan, following Russia's new threats over the seizure of commercial ships. Stay with us, we've got more news right after the break. Welcome back. This morning, the Los Angeles Lakers have a new record-setting price tag, and it's a big one. Our sports business reporter Chloe is here to break it all down. Chloe, good morning. What are we talking about here?
Good morning, Grace. So yesterday, August 12th, ESPN, the Associated Press, and Forbes all reported that venture capitalist Josh Kushner and former Walt Disney CEO Bob Iger have a deal to buy the Lakers. The price is $12.5 billion. That makes it the most expensive U.S. professional sports franchise ever. It blows past the previous benchmarks, including the Seattle Seahawks selling for $9.6 billion.
$12.5 billion. So who exactly are they buying the team from?
They're acquiring a controlling stake from Mark Walter, who's the CEO of Guggenheim Partners. And here's the part that has everyone talking. Walter is selling after just 10 to 14 months of official ownership. He bought control from the Buss family last year at a $10 billion valuation. So in roughly 1 year, he's walking away with a profit of about $2.5 billion.
Wow, that's a fast turnaround. Is Walter selling everything? Or does anyone else stay on?
It's not a total clean sweep, actually. Patrick Soon-Shiong will remain a minority owner of the franchise, and while the deal finalizes Walter's majority stake, it doesn't include the remaining shares still held by the Buss family. So there are a few pieces staying in place even as control changes hands.
And what about the day-to-day leadership? Who's running the team?
That's an interesting wrinkle. Bob Iger told the California Post that he and Kushner, quote, intend to honor, end quote, the existing agreement between Walter and Jeannie Buss. That agreement lets her remain the Lakers governor. But Iger did add a caveat, noting that this could change if circumstances shift. So for now, Jeannie Buss stays, but there's some flexibility built in.
Let's talk about the buyers. Start with Josh Kushner. Who is he?
Kushner is 41, and he's the founder and head of the venture capital firm Thrive Capital. His estimated net worth is $5.2 billion. His firm has backed some huge startups, names you'll recognize, like OpenAI, Stripe, Spotify, and Instagram. He's not new to basketball either. He previously held a stake in the Memphis Grizzlies, and right now, he owns a minority share in the Miami Heat.
I understand there's a World Cup connection in his background too?
There is. Kushner launched something called Thrive Eternal, a permanent capital vehicle. It was briefly positioned as an quote, anchor investor, end quote, for FIFA President Gianni Infantino's plan to sell stakes in future World Cup profits. But that plan was abandoned on July 31st, so just a couple weeks ago. And one more note for context. Josh is the brother of Jared Kushner, who's son-in-law to President Donald Trump.
And his partner in this, Bob Iger, most people know that name. Fill us in.
Right. Iger is 75, the former CEO of Disney. He stepped down this past March, back in March 2026, and was succeeded by Josh DeMero. These days, he's an advisor and venture partner at Thrive Capital, so he and Kushner already work together. And Iger's no stranger to sports ownership. He and his wife, former sports journalist Willow Bay, already own the NWSL team Angel City FC.
So these two have teamed up before. Was buying the Lakers always the plan?
Not originally, no. The two of them had previously tried to secure an NBA expansion team for Las Vegas, but by purchasing the Lakers outright, they skipped the waiting game. League expansion isn't expected until the 2028-2029 season at the earliest. So rather than wait years for a brand new franchise, they're buying one of the most iconic teams in the world right now.
Now you mentioned this deal raised some eyebrows. What's the concern about how fast it happened?
The speed is really the story here. One source, close to sports team owners, described it as, quote, one of the most bizarre things, end quote, they'd ever seen. The allegation is that Walter flipped the team within 72 hours of being approached by Kushner and Iger, and he reportedly did it without seeking any competing bids. For a franchise this valuable, not shopping it around is highly unusual.
And there's a legal cloud over the seller too, isn't there?
There is, and it's significant. Mark Walter's business empire is under federal investigation. Bloomberg Law reported that the FBI seized Walter's mobile phone and computer during a search of his private plane in Chicago last fall. It's a wide-ranging probe by federal prosecutors and the SEC. They're focused on alleged tax fraud and, quote, related party transactions, end quote, involving conflicts of interest at Guggenheim Partners and Walters Holding Company, TWG Global.
How has Walters' side responded to that?
TWG Global has denied any wrongdoing and says they're cooperating with investigators. But analysts have pointed out that the timing of the Lakers' sale, quote, can't be ignored, end quote, given these investigations. So there's an open question about whether the sudden sale is connected to the legal pressure. To be clear, no charges, and the company maintains it's done nothing wrong.
Let's turn to the team itself. Where do the Lakers stand right now, on the court?
Well, they're still a global brand and a merchandise powerhouse. They've got 17 NBA championships, which is second only to Boston. The current roster is built around scoring champion Luka Doncic, and he's under contract through the 2028-2029 season. So the new owners are getting a superstar locked in for the long haul.
But they did lose a pretty famous face recently, right?
They did. LeBron James left after 8 seasons with the Lakers. He signed as a free agent with the Philadelphia 76ers. So it's a bit of a transition moment for the franchise, losing one legend but keeping a young centerpiece in Doncic. New ownership, new era, and a roster still very much in the spotlight.
And this $12.5 billion price, how does it fit the broader NBA market?
It really reflects how fast NBA franchise values are climbing. For comparison, Forbes previously ranked the Lakers as the second most valuable NBA team at $10 billion. That trailed only the Golden State Warriors at $11 billion, and it was ahead of the New York Knicks at $9.75 billion. So this sale price actually leaps well past even those recent valuations.
So before this is official, what still has to happen?
The sale is pending approval from the NBA's Board of Governors. That process typically takes several weeks. The next board meeting is scheduled for September in New York, so we won't have a final green light immediately. But if it clears, the Lakers will have a record-breaking new ownership group, led by Kushner and Iger.
Fascinating story on every level. Chloe, thanks so much for walking us through it this morning.
My pleasure, Grace.
Here are some other headlines. Turning our attention to Colombia, where the ground is still shaking things up, President Abelardo de la Espriella reports the death toll has climbed to 265, with 3,500 injured. Nearly 500 people are missing, though some crowdsourced sites say that number is actually over 4,100. It has been a crushing blow for over 25,800 families, and 140 buildings have completely crumbled. Cali Mayor Alejandro Eder says rescue crews are in the final phase, racing against the clock as they hit the 72-hour mark. Meanwhile, the Geological Service has recorded 130 aftershocks since Monday. The world is stepping up to help. The United States pledged over $15 million, Mexico flew in 20 tons of food insecurity, and El Salvador provided 100 tons of supplies across 2 planes. President de la Espriella has declared an economic emergency and 3 days of national mourning, promising a fund to rebuild the broken infrastructure. In Washington, President Trump is shaking up the shot schedule with a new executive order calling for the spacing out of childhood vaccines. However, for parents wondering if they need to pivot, reports say nothing is changing right away. Moving to the courtroom, where things are getting electric. A wrongful death lawsuit in Kentucky alleges officers used electric gloves between 23 and 27 times, and tasers 13 times, on 43-year-old Jonathan Mansfield before he suffered cardiac arrest. One glove application lasted 99 seconds, which is a shocking 6 times the 15-second limit. New York Attorney General Letitia James is outraged, warning that misuse of these devices will lead to consequences. This comes as Democratic Representatives Jayapal Frost and Ramirez criticize the purchase of such gear. Former acting ICE Director John Sandweg also warned that these gloves could be misused on non-threats. Indeed, ICE records show a sparking rise in violence, with 1,330 detainees subjected to force during the first year of Trump's second term, a 54% jump. Other lawsuits involving these gloves in Las Vegas and a courtroom were dismissed, as those cases failed to stick. On a lighter note, the economy is finally cooling off. Consumer Price Index data shows inflation rose 3.4% through July, down from 3.5% in June. Because prices aren't hiking as hard, the Federal Reserve feels little fresh urgency to raise interest rates. Traders have lowered their expectations for a September hike to 36%. This softer data sent gold prices soaring to a 2-month high, though investors eventually decided to cash out and book their profits. Everyone is now waiting for the Producer Price Index report to see if the trend continues. Finally, in a landmark trial, a jury has found Instagram and YouTube liable for social media addiction. It seems the court decided these platforms were simply too addictive to ignore. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Opus 4.8, Gemini Pro 3.1, Gemini Flash 3, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.